Shark,
Yes.
tomorrow in the tank on this.
Any experience wrestling an alligator?
Nothing would surprise me.
Johnny Carson was the face of late-night television for decades, making millions laugh every night with his charm, wit, and unforgettable monologues. But behind the smiles and applause, there was a side of Carson the public never saw, a side that stayed hidden for over 30 years. What really shaped the man behind the microphone? What secrets did he take to the grave? Join us as we uncover the story behind Johnny Carson's darkest secret and reveal the hidden life of one of television's greatest icons, the boy who learned to hide. Johnny Carson was born on October 23, 1925, in Corning, Iowa, a small and quiet town in the American Midwest. Life there was simple, and people mostly kept to themselves. But Carson's early years were not as stable as they seemed. His father worked for a power company, and that job required the family to move often. These frequent changes meant Johnny never stayed in one place long enough to build deep friendships or feel fully settled. Eventually, the family moved to Norfolk, Nebraska, where Carson spent most of his childhood. Norfolk offered more stability, but it was still a quiet and conservative town where life followed a routine. This environment shaped Carson in important ways. He grew up surrounded by structure, predictability, and emotional restraint. There was little room for open expression or deep emotional conversations. From an early age, he learned to keep things inside and adapt quietly to whatever situation he was in. As a child, Johnny Carson was known for being shy and reserved. He wasn't the kind of boy who easily made friends or spoke up in class. Instead, he stayed in the background, watching others rather than joining in. He preferred spending time alone, often lost in his own thoughts or imagination. This quiet nature wasn't just a personality trait, it became a way of life. Carson learned to observe people closely, picking up on how they spoke, acted, and reacted. This skill would later help him as a performer, but at the time, it also kept him at a distance from others. He didn't express his feelings openly and rarely shared what he was thinking. Even at a young age, there were clear signs of emotional self-containment. He kept his thoughts and feelings private, creating a barrier between himself and the outside world. This habit would follow him into adulthood and become a defining part of who he was. Everything began to change when Carson was 12 years old. One day, he came across a book called The Golden Book of Magic. It immediately caught his attention and sparked a deep interest. Magic gave him something he hadn't found before, a way to connect with people without exposing his true self. He began practicing tricks and soon started performing for family and neighbors under the name The Great Carsone. For the first time, he was able to stand in front of others and entertain them. But this wasn't the same as opening up emotionally. Instead, it gave him control. He could decide what people saw, how they reacted, and when the performance ended. This was where Carson's dual identity began to take shape. On one side, there was the performer, confident, funny, and engaging. On the other side, there was the private individual, quiet, distant, and guarded. Magic allowed him to build a connection with others while still keeping his true feelings hidden. It became his first mask, one that he would continue to wear in different forms for the rest of his life. At just 17 years old, Carson joined the U.S. Navy during World War II. He served as an ensign aboard the USS Pennsylvania in the Pacific. Although he did not see direct combat, military life had a strong impact on him. It required discipline, structure, and the ability to stay calm under pressure. This experience strengthened traits he had already begun to develop. He learned to control his emotions even more tightly and to remain composed in stressful situations. These skills would later become part of his public image, especially during live television. Even in the Navy, Carson continued to perform magic tricks for fellow sailors. Once again, performance became his way of interacting with others. It allowed him to connect without being emotionally open, reinforcing a pattern that had already taken root. One of the most important influences on Carson's personality was his relationship with his mother, Ruth Carson. People who knew the family often described her as cold and critical. She rarely showed affection and was not the kind of parent who openly expressed love or support. Carson later admitted that she never told him she loved him. That absence of warmth had a lasting effect on him. As a child, he likely learned that emotional expression was not welcome or rewarded. Instead of seeking comfort, he turned inward. This upbringing left a deep psychological imprint. He developed a fear of vulnerability and avoided emotional closeness. At the same time, he carried a quiet need for approval that was never fully satisfied. To cope, he built a habit of emotional suppression, keeping his feelings hidden and under control. These early experiences shaped the man he would become, someone who could make millions of people feel comfortable while rarely letting anyone truly know him. And as his life moved forward, that hidden side would become even harder to ignore. Building the perfect persona. After finishing college, Johnny Carson stepped into the world of broadcasting with a clear goal: to entertain. His first real opportunity came at WOW Radio and Television in Omaha, Nebraska. It was a small start, but it gave him the space to learn and improve. He hosted a morning show, wrote his own material, and performed regularly. These early years were important because they allowed him to experiment with his style. But Carson knew Omaha wasn't where he would stay. Like many performers at the time, he set his sights on Los Angeles. Moving there in the early 1950s was a big step. It meant more competition, more pressure, and bigger opportunities. For Carson, it was the moment where ambition met the right place. Carson's big break didn't come in a planned way. It happened unexpectedly. He was working as a comedy writer for Red Skelton, a well-known television star at the time. Carson's job was to stay behind the scenes, helping create material for the show. Then one day, Skelton was injured just before a broadcast and couldn't perform. Carson was asked to step in. It was a high-pressure situation, but he handled it calmly. He went on air and delivered a strong performance that impressed both the audience and people in the industry. That moment changed everything. It showed that Carson wasn't just a writer, he was a performer who could handle live television. Soon after, he began getting hosting opportunities. He worked on shows like Earn Your Vacation and later Who Do You Trust? These roles gave him regular exposure and helped him build confidence in front of a live audience. It was during this period that Carson developed the style that would later define his career. He didn't act overly energetic or loud. Instead, he spoke in a conversational tone, as if he were talking directly to each viewer at home. This made people feel included and comfortable. He also became known for his quick wit. Carson could respond to unexpected moments with ease. If something went wrong, he didn't panic. He turned it into a joke. This ability made him seem natural and in control, even in live situations. Another key part of his style was relatable humor. He didn't rely on complicated jokes. He talked about everyday topics, current events, and simple observations that people could understand. This made his humor feel accessible to a wide audience. In 1962, Carson was given the opportunity that would define his career. He was chosen to take over The Tonight Show. The program already existed, but it needed a host who could keep audiences engaged night after night. Carson stepped into that role and quickly made it his own. He introduced a style that changed late-night television. Each episode began with a monologue where he delivered jokes about current events. His timing and delivery made even simple jokes feel effective. He also became known for his guest interviews. He listened carefully, responded quickly, and made guests feel comfortable. At the same time, everything was carefully managed. The show felt relaxed, but it was not random. Carson created a sense of controlled spontaneity. It looked natural, but it was built on preparation and structure. And as his success grew, that hidden side would begin to affect every part of his personal life. Love without connection. Johnny Carson's first marriage began in 1949, shortly after he finished college. He married Jody Merrill Wolcott, a woman he met during his time at the University of Nebraska. At the start, their relationship seemed stable and hopeful. They settled into family life and had 3 sons, Christopher, Richard, and Corey. From the outside, it looked like Carson was building both a career and a home. But problems started to grow early on. Carson was deeply focused on his work. As he tried to build a name for himself in radio and television, he spent long hours away from home. His career became his main priority, leaving little time or energy for his family. Even when he was physically present, he was often emotionally distant. There were also reports of infidelity during this marriage. These actions added to the strain and created a lack of trust. Over time, the combination of emotional absence, long work hours, and unfaithfulness wore the relationship down. After years of tension, the marriage ended in 1963. It was clear that Carson struggled to balance personal relationships with his growing career. Just months after his first divorce, Carson married Joanne Copeland, a model and television personality. Together, they appeared to be a glamorous couple, especially as Carson's fame continued to rise. On the surface, everything seemed polished and successful. Behind closed doors, however, the reality was very different. Joanne later spoke about the difficulties in their marriage, describing Carson as verbally harsh and emotionally difficult. She claimed that he could be cruel with his words, especially during arguments. His sharp sense of humor, which made people laugh on television, often turned into cutting remarks in private. Alcohol played a role in making things worse. Carson was known to drink, and when he did, his behavior could become more unpredictable. Conflicts became more intense, and emotional distance continued to grow. Instead of working through problems, Carson often avoided deeper conversations. During this period, his reputation for having a sharp and sometimes hurtful personality began to spread among those close to him. The marriage lasted nearly a decade, but eventually ended in 1972, marked by the same issues that affected his first relationship. Carson's third marriage, to Joanna Holland, lasted longer than the previous two. At 13 years, it gave the appearance of stability. From the outside, it seemed like Carson might have finally found a more balanced relationship. However, the same patterns continued beneath the surface. Carson remained emotionally withdrawn. He avoided serious conversations and struggled with expressing his feelings. Even during calm periods, there was a sense of distance between him and his wife. Friends and those close to the couple said that Carson often pulled away when things became too personal or emotional. Instead of addressing issues directly, he would shut down or change the subject. This made it difficult to build a deeper connection. In 1983, Joanna filed for divorce without warning. Carson was reportedly surprised, but he didn't fight to save the marriage. He accepted the decision and moved on quietly. This response reflected his usual approach to conflict: avoidance rather than engagement. Carson's fourth and final marriage was to Alexis Moss in 1987. By this time, he was older and nearing the later stages of his career. This relationship was much more private than the others. Alexis stayed out of the spotlight, and the couple lived a quieter life together. With less pressure from work, Carson seemed to have a calmer lifestyle. There were fewer public conflicts, and the relationship appeared more peaceful. However, even in this marriage, Carson did not fully change. He remained emotionally reserved and continued to keep his inner world to himself. This relationship was not defined by emotional closeness, but by stability and privacy. It worked in part because it did not demand the kind of openness that Carson struggled to give. And while his marriages showed this pattern clearly, his role as a father would reveal an even deeper side of that same struggle: a father at a distance. Johnny Carson's challenges with emotional connection were not limited to his marriages. They were also clear in his role as a father. He had 3 sons from his first marriage: Christopher, Rick, and Corey. From the outside, it may have seemed like he had a complete family, but the reality was more complicated. Carson's career took up most of his time. As he worked to build and maintain his success in television, he was often away from home. Long hours, constant preparation, and the demands of hosting a nightly show left little room for family life. This meant he was physically absent for large parts of his sons' childhoods. Even when he was present, there was still a distance. Carson struggled to express emotions and did not naturally engage in deep or meaningful conversations. He found it difficult to talk about personal issues or offer emotional support. Instead of guiding his sons through challenges or connecting with them on a personal level, he often remained quiet and reserved. This created a gap between him and his children. They knew him as a famous figure, but not always as an emotionally available father. Over time, that distance became part of their relationship. It wasn't the result of one single event, but a pattern that continued for years. Among his 3 sons, Rick Carson faced the most difficulties. His life was marked by struggles with mental health and substance use. These issues created tension and added pressure to an already distant relationship with his father. Rick reportedly felt a sense of abandonment. Like many children in similar situations, he may have wanted more attention, support, and understanding from his father. But Carson, who had always struggled with emotional expression, did not know how to respond in the way Rick needed. There were chances over the years for the two to rebuild their relationship, but those moments were often missed. Communication remained limited, and emotional barriers stayed in place. Instead of growing closer, the distance between them remained. This was not because Carson did not care, but because he did not know how to show it. His lifelong habit of keeping feelings inside made it hard for him to respond to his son's struggles in a direct and supportive way. In 1991, everything changed suddenly. Rick Carson died in a car accident at the age of 39. He had been driving along a steep road when his car went off a cliff. The news came without warning and was a devastating shock. For Carson, this was more than just a loss. It was the end of any chance to repair the relationship he had with his son. All the things that had gone unsaid and unresolved were now permanent. There would be no future conversations, no opportunity to reconnect, and no way to make things right. The sudden nature of the tragedy made it even harder to process. It forced Carson to face the reality of what had been lost, not just in that moment, but over many years. After Rick's death, Carson was deeply affected. Those close to him said he was filled with regret. He thought about the distance between them and the moments that had been missed. But even in grief, Carson stayed true to his lifelong pattern. He kept everything inside. He did not speak publicly about his son's death. He did not share his feelings in interviews or open up to others in a visible way. Even in private, he struggled to express what he was going through. Instead of talking about his pain, he carried it silently. And as this silence grew stronger, it would soon connect to another side of Carson that few people truly understood: the hidden struggle. To millions of viewers, Johnny Carson appeared calm, steady, and in control. Night after night, he delivered jokes with ease and handled live television without showing stress. But away from the camera, his life was more complicated. One of the ways he dealt with pressure and inner conflict was through alcohol. Carson's drinking was known to people close to him. He did not usually drink while working, but in his private time, alcohol became a way to cope. It helped him avoid dealing with emotions he was not comfortable facing. Instead of talking about stress, frustration, or personal problems, he often chose to push those feelings aside. Alcohol created a clear split between his public and private behavior. On television, he remained composed and professional. Off-screen, things could be very different. Drinking sometimes made his emotions harder to control and brought out reactions that people rarely saw in public. This pattern allowed him to maintain his image while quietly struggling in his personal life. It also made it harder for him to address the deeper issues he was dealing with. While Carson was known for being polite and controlled in public, those close to him described another side of his personality. He could have a quick temper and sudden mood changes. These shifts were often unexpected and could be difficult for others to handle. There were reports of verbal aggression, especially during private moments or conflicts. Carson had a sharp sense of humor, but in personal situations, that same sharpness could turn into harsh sarcasm. Instead of making people laugh, his words could hurt. Some people described situations where he raised his voice during arguments. Others spoke about how quickly his mood could change from calm to angry. These reactions were not constant, but when they happened, they left a strong impression. There were also stories of physical expressions of anger. One well-known example involved Carson punching a wall during an argument in a hotel. This showed that his frustration could build up and come out in sudden ways. These moments revealed a side of Carson that was very different from the one viewers saw on television. They showed that beneath his calm image, there were emotions he struggled to manage. At the center of these struggles was Carson's need for control. He liked things to be organized, predictable, and managed. This was clear in his work, where he carefully controlled every part of his show. But it also appeared in his personal life. He avoided situations that felt uncertain, especially emotional ones. Conversations about feelings, conflict, or vulnerability were uncomfortable for him. Instead of engaging with them, he often stepped back or changed direction. And as these patterns continued, they would soon lead to conflicts that Carson never chose to repair. The grudges that defined him. One of the most well-known and talked about conflicts in Johnny Carson's life was his falling out with Joan Rivers. For years, Rivers had been a regular guest on The Tonight Show. More than that, she was seen as someone Carson supported and helped guide. She often spoke about how much she respected him and credited him for helping her grow in the entertainment world. Their relationship was not just professional, it had a personal layer of trust and loyalty. That is why what happened next had such a strong impact. In 1986, Rivers accepted an offer to host her own late-night show on the Fox network. It was a major opportunity for her career. However, she did not tell Carson about the decision before it became public. When he found out, he felt deeply betrayed. For Carson, this was not just a business move. He saw it as a personal decision that should have been discussed with him first. His reaction was immediate and firm. He cut off all contact with Rivers. He did not call her, and he refused to take her calls. She was no longer invited to appear on The Tonight Show. It was a complete and permanent break. What made this situation even more striking was that Rivers tried to fix the relationship. Over the years, she made public statements expressing regret and asking for forgiveness. She spoke openly about how much the situation hurt her and how she wished things could be different. Despite this, Carson never changed his position. He chose not to respond and never spoke to her again. This incident became one of the clearest examples of how Carson handled conflict. Once he felt betrayed, he did not look back. There was no effort to repair the relationship, even when the other person tried to make things right. The situation with Joan Rivers was not an isolated case. Carson had a pattern of ending relationships in a similar way when he felt disrespected or crossed. Another well-known example involved singer Wayne Newton. During one of his monologues, Carson made jokes that Newton believed questioned his image. Newton took the comment seriously and went to confront Carson in person. The meeting was tense, and some reports suggest it became heated. After that encounter, the two men never rebuilt any kind of relationship. There was no public apology and no effort to move forward. There was also his issue with Richard Dawson, the popular host of Family Feud. After a disagreement, Carson made it clear that Dawson would no longer be welcome on his show. There was no public explanation given, and the situation was never fully discussed. It was handled quietly but firmly, which was typical of Carson's approach. These examples show a consistent pattern. When Carson decided to cut someone off, he did so completely. He did not explain his decisions publicly, and he rarely gave second chances. For him, loyalty was extremely important, and once it was broken, the relationship was over. People who worked with him or knew him personally understood this about him. It created an environment where others were careful not to upset him. At the same time, it made it difficult to build long-lasting personal connections with him. Carson's approach to conflict reflected the same emotional distance seen throughout his life. Instead of facing issues directly and working through them, he chose to remove the problem entirely. This often meant removing people from his life. Over time, these choices added up. Relationships ended, connections faded, and the circle around him became smaller. By the time he stepped away from his career, there were fewer people left who truly knew him. This pattern would not just affect his personal life, it would also shape the way he chose to leave the public eye entirely. The ultimate withdrawal. When Johnny Carson retired in 1992, it marked the end of an era in television. After hosting The Tonight Show for 30 years, he had become one of the most recognized and trusted faces in entertainment. Millions of people had made him part of their nightly routine. So when he announced he was stepping down, it was a major moment. But what happened next was even more surprising. Carson didn't just retire from the show, he stepped away from public life almost completely. Many celebrities continue to appear in interviews, attend events, or make occasional returns after retiring. Carson chose a very different path. He made a clear decision to leave it all behind. Carson's final episode aired in May 1992. It was watched by tens of millions of viewers, showing just how much he meant to his audience. On that night, he said goodbye in the same way he had always carried himself, calm, controlled, and composed. There were no dramatic moments or emotional speeches. He thanked his audience and his team, then quietly stepped away. For many, it felt like the end of something much bigger than just a television show. People expected that, over time, he might return for a special appearance, or at least stay somewhat visible. But Carson had already made up his mind. After retiring, Carson refused every request to return to the spotlight. Television networks invited him to appear in interviews, specials, and tribute shows. He turned them all down. Even when major events were organized to celebrate his career, he chose not to participate. This was unusual for someone of his status. Fans wanted to hear from him again, to see him reflect on his career, or to share stories from his years on television. But Carson showed no interest in doing that. He did not give interviews, did not appear on talk shows, and did not record messages for public broadcasts. After leaving television, Carson settled into a quiet life in Malibu, California. His home overlooked the ocean, offering privacy and distance from the busy world he had left behind. He spent his time away from cameras, crowds, and public attention. There were very few sightings of him during these years. Occasionally, people would see him on his boat or during brief outings, but these moments were rare. He did not attend social events or maintain a visible presence in the entertainment world. This lifestyle was not forced on him. It was something he chose. He had spent decades in front of millions of viewers, and now he wanted the opposite. He wanted space, silence, and control over his own time. For Carson, this was not just retirement. It was a complete withdrawal from the life he had once led. Johnny Carson passed away on January 23, 2005, at the age of 79. The cause was complications from emphysema, a lung disease often linked to smoking. Although he had stopped smoking later in life, the long-term effects remained. If you like this video, hit that subscribe button and join us as we explore the untold stories of Hollywood legends.